Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Politics Now, where we're talking about modern politics in modern America. And today, I'm going to be discussing why Desantis, he is extremely close and actually very likely to not win any state during the primary. He's going to get a couple of votes, and yeah, he'll probably get around 20% of the vote, but he doesn't have enough of support to actually gain a majority in some of these states. Even Florida, he is likely to lose Florida, so yeah, let's just get into that. So, before I talk about the state polling, you just gotta look here, and honestly, he has gone down quite a bit, and he is losing more and more points. Like, last time I did this, he was in 21 to 20, and now he's gone all the way down to 19, and he seems to be going farther and farther down, and he'll probably go back up to 22 or 20, but honestly, he might actually just go down to maybe 15, and somebody else down here overtakes him, like Pence, Haley, maybe Tim Scott, or Ramaswamy, any of these. I don't, Chris Christie, I don't, just any of these down here could probably overtake DeSantis if he gets low enough, but that's not what you want to have during a Republican primary, especially if your poll numbers are going down. And by the time the actual elections start, his poll numbers are going to be so far down that he can't really win any state. And even though he's in second place with around 20% of the vote in the polls, he is still not doing good in any state. Alabama and Florida are probably his best shot, but even then, he is not doing very good in these states at all. And recent polling there hasn't really been done. And with you know, the national swing of things, he is probably doing worse in places like Alabama and Florida. But Alabama, this was taken at the beginning of this year. He's only at 50%, and there's still a large undecided vote and a margin of error. And if they did more polling there, he would likely be very, very far down compared to the beginning of the year, because honestly, that coincides with his polling numbers, where he's much higher at the beginning of the year than he is right now, where he's gone down almost 10 points. And yeah, he's probably not doing that well in Alabama. Arizona, he's not doing that well. Arkansas, California, he's not doing that well. Even Florida, he is in for a rough ride, and if he can't get enough of the vote, he's likely going to lose it. And he's just losing more and more support, and he's likely to lose more support with the debates and the polling going further and further along, because with his campaign, the trend is either stagnation at 20 or losing support, and you don't want that if you want to win states. And yeah, it's really not going to go that well for him. Georgia is also being widely contested, even though he's from Florida and would have a greater appeal there, but still, latest polling, he's down at 32%, while Trump has around 50%. And that's not very good for someone even April he was still up. May he was still up, and Trump is doing a lot better than he was in April and May, because DeSantis around March, he still had a wide support of the vote, and it's April where he started dipping, but he was still doing much better in April than he is right now. He's a full 5 points up in April compared to now where he's at 19. So, yeah, it's not going to look good for Georgia. Illinois, he's not doing that good. Indiana, Iowa, this is likely to be the first one, and look at all the ones recently. It was a bit of a competition earlier this year in April last year, but now May, June, July, it's Trump, 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 Trump. And he is at 19, 21, 33, 21, 24%, and you that's not very good if you want to win the first state. And if he loses the first state, he's likely to lose maybe 1 point of support, because if you start off losing the first state, and especially if he loses the first four states like Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, which if you look at the polls, they are all very likely to go to Trump. He's going to lose a lot of support, especially since he's losing the first four states. If he loses the Super Tuesday states, that also will lose him more support, which he needs to win states like Alabama, Georgia, Florida. The states around Florida and Florida, he needs more support to actually win them. And honestly, since those are a lot later than these earlier states which have more Trump support, he's likely to lose so much support that he loses all chances of winning those states. And especially Florida, it's already very, very, very contested, and Trump is actually currently winning in Florida. So if he loses more support, he's not winning Florida. He is losing his own state, which he is a very popular governor in. But all of these states are a similar thing. Trump is way up in most of the polls. Michigan, not a lot of polling has been done, but it's still widely contested, and Trump has a more Midwestern appeal, so he's probably doing better there. Mississippi, DeSantis should most likely have an advantage here, but Trump is beating him by a lot. And this was earlier in the year when DeSantis was doing much better, but yeah, Trump is still winning that. Missouri, DeSantis should be doing better, but again, earlier in the year, Trump is still beating him, and even these other polls from last year or earlier in the year, it's still a pretty contested state, and given the national polling, he is probably losing it by a lot more, or it's a more contested state, which, given that the fact that he's the governor of Florida, probably shouldn't be the case, but I mean, he's polling at 19%, so it's not going to look good for him. Nevada, I don't really think that DeSantis has much of an appeal here. He's polling at 21, 22, and even last year when DeSantis was doing better, he was still losing the state, and yeah, now it's just a complete mess. This Nevada is more reflecting national polling and is likely to be the fourth state in the first four states, and yeah, it's not going to look good for him. New Hampshire, DeSantis should probably have more of an advantage because a lot of the voter base in New Hampshire is the more center left neocon vote, and yeah, he is not doing good. 10% even in this poll from earlier this month. But the most recent poll, he's still at 15%, and he's dangerously close from any of these other candidates overtaking him. Because even Chris Christie is polling 7% there. This poll from earlier this month, Chris Christie and Ron DeSantis are almost tied. That is not good. If you are tied with Chris Christie in one of these states, you are not doing good. You are not going to win the state. Especially if it's a recent poll, you're not likely to win the state. And Trump has been on top ever since January, and it's just going down further and further downhill for him, and he's likely to lose that state. New York, Trump has a pretty large base, and again, all this polling is showing that Trump has a major advantage, 61% to Ron DeSantis, which they haven't done the polling on, but yeah, considering how Ron DeSantis is still represented through the others, it's still not very good that he Donald Trump is polling 61%. In reality, if Ron DeSantis was on the ticket, he'll probably be at like 55%, and DeSantis will be at like 21. But still, that's not enough to win the state, and you're not going to gain a majority. North Carolina, recent polls showing Trump up and DeSantis at 22%. Not looking good there. Ohio, Trump has a more of a base in there. And even earlier this year when DeSantis was up, Trump is still beating him by a large majority, and DeSantis is stuck at 15%, which he's likely doing worse now. So that's not doing good. Oklahoma, a bit more contested, but yeah, Trump is still in the majority. Pennsylvania, Trump has more of a base in here, and DeSantis is not likely to win the state. Rhode Island, Trump is beating him, even though this was last year, which DeSantis was doing a lot better in terms of polling last year, but yeah, most likely going to go Trump. South Carolina, a very important state. Trump is taking it all, and yeah, it's kind of sad to see because this is this is kind of embarrassing to see because why would you run this if you're losing so hard in every single state poll? Tennessee, yeah, same story. Texas, now DeSantis might have more of an appeal in Texas, but yeah, 19%, 23%. Trump is winning that. And he didn't even win that in 2016 because they voted Ted Cruz, and he's not in this election, so it yeah, if it's probably the best case scenario for DeSantis if this is the current roster that nobody else joins in, because if Ted Cruz were to throw his hat into the ring, DeSantis would lose all chance of winning Texas, which is a very important state to win because they have so many votes for the primary, and you need to win a lot of those. But Trump still has a pretty heavy majority on DeSantis in Texas, which is not very good if he wants to win the nomination. Utah, this is a much more pro DeSantis state, but again, recent polling shows that Trump is still beating him, but it is a very contested state. Outside of Florida, Utah is probably the most likely state to go DeSantis. And yeah, so we have Virginia, Trump in the most recent poll, which is better for DeSantis in May, but yeah, he's still beating him by 20 points. West Virginia, going Trump. Wisconsin is also a very is more likely to be Trump, but it is still a pretty contested state from this recent poll. But yeah, if you look at these other polls, still more contested. Wisconsin is a much more contested state, but Trump has more of a base. He has the Midwestern appeal, and I would totally call Wisconsin for Trump. He is very likely to win it, and honestly, looking at all of these state polls in the national, the national Republican poll, it is not looking good for DeSantis. And I have to ask, like I always do, in every single video I make about DeSantis, why continue? What do you have to gain? You are not going to win the nomination. You are likely not going to win any state or get a majority of any state. And you are doing worse against Biden compared to your main opponent who is beating you by 34 points. Why stay in? Because he's getting a ton of money funneled into him by the Republican base, who are the rhinos and the neocons. They want to use DeSantis as sort of a way to regain power, but they don't understand that we could totally use this money to fight Biden. We could use it for the eventual winner to fight against the Democrats to win 2024 and to look forward to beating our main opponent instead of infighting between ourselves with a failed candidate who is not going to win the vote. No matter how much money you can funnel into him, he's not going to win the vote. unless a miracle happens where DeSantis somehow regains and backtracks on the 34-point lead that Trump has on him, he's not likely to win. He is basically, his campaign died once the first indictment came through, and he had no chance of recovery. Second indictment, no chance, and then the national feeling, yeah, he basically just lost every single chance he had. But honestly, looking at this polling, he didn't really have any chance of overtaking Trump. At his best, at his very best, he was still about 10 points away, which, yeah, it's closer, but still, it's not close enough. You need more of a tie to actually overtake him and win the nomination, because you're going to have that split party where it's going to be much harder to win states in the general election, win the primary, win all these swing states in the general election, defeat Biden, and it's not going to go well. It's not going to go well, especially when, honestly, DeSantis is a much worse candidate than Donald Trump. He lacks charisma. He doesn't have enough of appeal in the more contested states, because his appeal is the Sun Belt, which, honestly, it's not enough of an appeal in a lot of these states that he can have a major advantage, because Trump has the Midwestern appeal, which is very useful for a lot of the swing states, which just so happen to be in the Midwest, and helps him in places like Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, even Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and he does actually do very well in Illinois. It's just Chicago is there, and I don't really see any Republican winning Illinois again. It's just gone. It's one of the safe states. No one is going to win that. But for the primary, Trump actually does very well in Illinois, and he has that appeal in the more rural areas that aren't Chicago. So yeah, I don't really know why DeSantis would continue. I know why he would, with all the money that's being funneled into him, but from like a logical point of view, I just don't understand why you would continue with this losing strategy, which, yeah, it's kind of like the Republican base dream. You pull off the losing strategy because you hold a grudge against your main opponent who has more of a support in your base. So you would rather lose an election than give any sort of power to the base in your party that disagrees with you. And it's just a lot of stubborn people who would rather funnel millions of dollars into a failed candidate just to spite Trump. It doesn't make sense. Why would you use that money on splitting the party rather than defeating Biden, which is the point of the nomination? You want to pick a candidate that can beat your opponent in the election so you can have a friendly president. It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. If you want to win an election, don't funnel all of your money into failed candidates who don't win. They don't win. But yeah, DeSantis, just drop out. It's not worth it. You're just embarrassing yourself. Who cares about all the money being funneled in? You gotta worry about your political career and the fact that you are a career politician, so why would you destroy your career for this? It doesn't make sense. Yeah, you might pull at 20%, but it's not going to matter later on when you lose the election and you're not going to win any other election because you've already lost a major presidential nomination. So, yeah, that's it. Bye.